It's gas prices that set the price of electricity. So if you get a big spike in gas prices, as we saw after Russia invaded Ukraine, that flows through to the price of electricity. The price of electricity was the major driver of inflation, and because we had inflation running so hot back then, we had 13 interest rate hikes.
Is it the case that the terrible situation in the Middle East has a silver lining for Australian energy producers?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're expecting massive price rises, and in fact, we've seen price rises of up to 55% in liquefied natural gas across Europe, and so that will ultimately flow through to global prices and to the profits of our big exporters.
And so even if all parties were to end the war tomorrow, is Australia still going to reap the dividends for some time yet?
Well, yes, you'd expect so, because there's only really three big exporters in the world. There's Australia, there's Qatar, and there's America. They account for about 70% of all exports. So you take one of those out, that's a mighty big hole in global supplies. And you've also got to factor into this equation that Qatar has been they haven't just shut down, they've been hit. Their facilities have been hit by drones, and they're not prepared to actually start repairs until the war is over. Now, if this war drags on for weeks or months, then you're going to have more months or weeks or months for the repairs to take place and then to get back up to speed with supplying the world. So yes, you would expect price impacts right through.
Are there implications for Australian consumers? The Santos CEO, Kevin Gallagher, has said that the domestic market is almost quarantined from the global price influx. Is he right?
No.
Why not?
Kevin Gallagher runs Santos. Santos is the company that has been draining the east coast of gas. It is the company that's responsible for gas shortages on the east coast and for the fact that Australian prices and Australian households pay more for gas here than our customers in Japan, Korea and elsewhere in Asia. And it's been cheaper to re-import Australian gas from those markets back to here. We've had a gas reservation policy enacted. It's not actually in place just yet, primarily because of Santos's action. And that will ensure we've got adequate supply, but it's not going to insulate us from global price movements.
So what should Australian consumers expect to see on their power bills?
Well, gas is hugely important in this whole equation because it's gas prices that set the price of electricity. So if you get a big spike in gas prices, as we saw after Russia invaded Ukraine, that flows through to the price of electricity. The price of electricity was the major driver of inflation, and because we had inflation running so hot back then, we had 13 interest rate hikes.
Okay, so if, of course, we see a repeat of that situation, we could infer that the price rise in electricity is going to push interest rates higher.
I think so, absolutely.
Okay. But if the reservation was in place now, would it help to keep prices low?
It would ensure that we've got adequate supplies, but you're not going to insulate Australian prices from the global price because we are part of the global market. We are a big supplier of that market. So we're not going to be charging customers offshore a higher price than we're going to be getting here. It'll be around about the same kind of price.
Given the tax take from energy, does this mean that it's actually good for Australia in budgetary terms, but a bad situation for Australian consumers?
I think that sums it up pretty well, because what we're going to see is the government will end up with more income from tax from the sale of LNG because prices are going to be much higher, but households will be paying much more for their gas. And bear in mind too, a lot of households and a lot of businesses rely on gas as their primary source of energy in households for cooking, for heating, all sorts of things. I guess one mitigating factor here is the fact that we're not in winter just yet, so the household use for gas is lower than it ordinarily would be.
Ian Verrender, thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten.